Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to A to Z Running. Friends, welcome to the A to Z Running podcast, where we help runners thrive. I'm Andi.
And I am Zach.
Today's topic is about growth mindset in running. And to help us talk about this topic, we have two-time Olympian Kim Conley joining us. She gives us an inside view to her compelling journey. We also discuss NCAA championships, a large in-person marathon, yay, and a newly named track.
All right, so lots to get to, but before we do, you need to head to AtoZrunning.com, click the word follow, and then on YouTube and all of the various podcast apps and platforms and social media sites,
wherever
subscribe
you listen.
to all of those things. And maybe just hit up each one and listen to each one in turn for every episode we publish.
You don't have to do
just
that.
to inflate the numbers a little bit.
No,
Sounds
Zach.
great.
Goodness
or
gracious.
Instead, what's really truly valuable is post your comments, your questions, your thoughts and ideas and all of that kind of stuff in places where we can see them so that we will interact with you, because that's really what we like to do the most.
Yes.
Like this very important question that all of you should be asking if you're not asking out loud, at least in your minds. This was shared by Ann on Instagram, so at Margs and Marathons. Thanks for sharing, Ann. The question is, does it make sense to do more reps on your weak side than your strong side? So we're talking about things like general strength, and specifically in reference to our most recent episode previous to this one, when we had physical therapist Adam Homolka on talking about strength and various things that you should be doing as runners. And we thought this was a great question, Anne. Certainly we all need to know, what do I need to do, especially if it's an imbalance that I'm trying to address? And of course, we are not physical therapists, but Adam is, and still is, even after he's not on our show in this episode. And so we asked him, and he shared his insight for Anne as well as everyone else. Essentially, it's exactly what you might guess. If you do notice, I'm quoting Adam here, that one side is weaker, tighter, or is more challenging to do an extra set on that side until it feels more symmetrical with your stronger side. So yeah, if you have an imbalance, you want to balance it out. But don't go crazy. Don't do an entire workout regimen on just your left side, but instead that little bit of extra to try to continue to incrementally make those gains back toward symmetry.
Very good. Well, thank you all for your questions and comments about our episode with Adam. We know it was really rich in information, so feel free to keep coming back to that, because we did do demonstrations and we have that PDF from Adam for you at AtoZrunning.com. I also want to mention that there is a marathon, in-person marathon, half marathon, 10K and 5K that you can participate in if you live in the Grand Rapids area or if you're traveling to Grand Rapids, and that's Rivertown Races. And we have a discount that you can still use, even though it's kind of late in the game, A2Z_2021 for 10% off any race.
Any of the events. And that event is on April 24th. So on April 24th, and if you have not signed up yet, you still can. Spots are available, but even the code and the discount itself is a limited supply. So
yes,
jump on it soon.
And we would love to see you there. Zach and I will both be there.
We'll be there.
Yeah.
Running the half.
Hope to see you there. And now let's get to the world of running.
As promised, we're going to begin the world of running sharing some national championship at the NCAA level. So let's just reflect very briefly, because we've done this too much and you're hearing too many people do this. 1 year ago at this time, the NCAA indoor championships were about to begin when everything stopped. Athletes were literally, if you recall us saying this, warming up for events on a Wednesday morning, early afternoon, when NCAA pulled the plug on the meet. They were about to compete. That's crazy. Crazy. So it happened this year. And in fact, it happened in rare good form. Lots of exciting things, as these events often promise. And so D1 National Championships this year was March 11 through 13. It was in Arkansas, in Fayetteville. And as you might guess, that held some special significance for the Arkansas women's team, but we'll come to that in a moment. First, I want to talk about the men, simply because I am enthralled with the performance of Oregon's Cole Hocker. Everyone, in fact, in the running community, it seems, is quite enthralled because he did amazing things. So at 19 years of age, a sophomore at Oregon, he pulled off the victory in the 1 mile for the national title, which is no small thing. But he also did so in a meeting record time of 3:53. And not only that, he basically led the entire race. He just put on a clinic for everyone else in the race. It's like, this is a national championship, but I'm way better than the rest of you. Let me show you how.
Oh, my goodness.
And he did that. And in fact, his last 400 meters was about a 53-second split. His last 200 meters was about a 25-second split.
Wow.
He pretty much accelerated 100% of the race, just did not stop accelerating until he crossed the line and realized nobody was around him anymore.
Wow.
That's something special.
Yeah.
And then 1 hour later, he ran in the 3,000-meter national title championship and won that as well.
Wow.
And did so only 0.2 of a second slower than the meeting record.
So perhaps this was a good event for him.
So he seems to be in rare form, and there's a lot of commentary around this. Exciting stuff. So their coach, this was Oregon's coach. Let me try to recall his name for you a moment. It's Robert Johnson, I believe. And he mentioned to Let's Run, at least was posting this, that he was planning to pull Cole out of the 3,000 meters. He wasn't going to let him run it.
Wow.
Because he had won that mile, because they already had the favorite of the race, Cooper Tier of Oregon, was in the race and was in great shape, and he was likely going to run well. And they were already pretty confident that they were going to be able to win the national title as a team. So he thought, save Cole's legs, not cause him any undue harm, and that would be okay. However, the score was close enough with LSU in second place that he thought, no, we got to leave him in it just to make sure. And then he won the race and nearly broke the meeting record. It was crazy. And his teammate Cooper was in second. In fact, the two of them were kicking each other down in one of the craziest finishes I've seen in a 3K in a long time.
Can people watch it?
You can.
Okay.
So I've got a video link for you. We're going to put it on the website,
Sweet.
AtoZrunning.com, so that you can watch this race. Actually, what the video will do is it will show you a number of things about Cole Hocker's season, because I think this is just a great way to do it. Sets up the race, and then you get to watch the mile and 3K and see just how crazy those finishes were.
I love this kind of stuff.
It's so good. So exciting. But, Cole Hocker wasn't the only athlete running in the national championships. There were other things happening, and many of them were good. So just a quick note here that the Oregon's men's team did win the meet, and did so largely on the backs of their distance runners. They won the 800-meter individual title, the mile, the 3,000 meters, and the DMR. Those are all distance, quote, distance events. They're really more like middle distance events to those of us who, run long distances.
Yes.
But they won those 4 distance events and second place in the 3K, and then went on to win 2 other titles as a team individually. So they really performed stellarly. In fact, I think they said it was the second most points ever scored at the NCAA indoor meet for the national title. That's really impressive.
Good X.
That's it. But on the women's side, we mentioned this meet was in Arkansas, so home team got the home team advantage. Arkansas's women took the win and did so as now their second consecutive title. Remember, last year was off, so it was back in 2019 indoor championships. And then they won their second consecutive title. Athing Mu, who has been star and rocking the world, especially the U20 world, in the kind of like long sprint and middle distance events. She performed in the meet, but unfortunately surprised in the 400 by not winning the race. So apparently that kind of put a little fire in her gut, because she came back in the 4x400 meter relay to anchor Arkansas's women's team in a time of 49.5, which amounts to the fastest 400 meters ever run by a female indoors in the NCAA.
Wow.
So she was motivated.
Maybe she's like practicing for the trials, like a little prelim, finals action.
And if you don't know, in indoor track and field, outdoor track and field, the final event of a championship meet is the 4x400 meter relay. And for those of us track runners, that's about the most exciting moment in your life every time it happens. No matter what the importance of the meet, it's basically like the 4x4. It's just crazy.
It's dark. There's the lights around the track.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
it's pretty great.
Not only did she run insanely fast, she anchored the team for the individual event victory. So they won the 4x400 meter relay, and the team won the meet after that relay.
That's great.
So what a moment for Athing Mu. Sorry about the open 400, but pulled it off in the relay.
That's phenomenal.
Exciting.
Well, Division 2 also had their championship, and that was in Birmingham, Alabama. March 11th through 13th. So same dates as the D1. And I'm excited to share this news personally because West Michigan's very own Grand Valley State University won the women's team competition. So congratulations, GVSU. And the men were runner-up. So they did they did good as well. And this is their third, the females, the third indoor title for women, 2011 and 2012 as well.
That is quite the program. So as far as Division II running programs go, there's basically a couple programs out there that like Adams State, Grand Valley State, that you have a healthy respect and or fear for them if you run in that division. Because chances are someone on that team is likely to beat you no matter how fast you are, and their team has a good chance of winning every single title any given year. And their record proves that. So this is a third team title indoors for the women, but they've got a bunch of cross-country titles, a bunch of runner-up finishes. They've got some outdoor titles. Like, they've done it all, and they continue to impress. So very impressive performance this year as well.
Yeah, and we should also congratulate one of our former guests, Nate Van Holten, who is one of the coaches at GVSU. So congrats, Q.
Excellent. Well, let's jump over to Japan for a moment. As Andi mentioned in the introduction, there's a number of reasons why this race is one for the world to be attentive to. First of all, because it's Japan running marathons, and that's always exciting.
Yeah.
So on March 14th, this was in Nagoya, Japan. They had an official open to the public,
a real marathon,
full marathon
Sorry,
race.
I jumped on you because I got so excited.
Jump up and down if you'd like. If you need to step out of your chair and do some jumping jacks. Okay, so in Nagoya, they ran a full featured marathon. That means 5,000 participants in the marathon. They had an elite race as well. 5,000 participants open to the public, as well as in the half marathon, 9,000 running. So they did the full thing. They did the real deal. And then, of course, now everyone's holding their breath, and they're going to watch and see, does something happen with COVID? They only did this because they thought that the numbers looked good enough and the vaccine counts looked good enough to be able to do something like this.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Can I share
quote?
The news. I'm gonna share the quote that was made by Japan Running News, and that's: barring any resulting spike in infection numbers later this month, Nagoya was a beacon of hope that this fall will see all those who could only watch from a distance this time get their chances on the streets of Boston, London, Tokyo, and the world's other major cities.
Absolutely.
So we're crossing our fingers, hoping there's no more virus.
And naturally paying just a little bit more attention to Japan than other places with the Tokyo Olympics looming. That's not really the right word, but we're excited for them and wanting to just see what's going on in Japan as we near those summer dates coming. Mm-hmm. So just a quick note, update then on the results of the Nagoya Marathon here. Mizuki Matsuda with Daihatsu ran 2:21.51 for the win. Now, they did report that it was less than ideal conditions, especially for a marathon, windy and not comfortable for the runners. So as a result, times tend to be a little bit slower. Even so, on the Masters side of things, you've heard us mention the World Marathon Masters record holder. So Mariko Ugeta, who runs with, by the way, Saitama OIG, she performed in this event at what would have been another attempt at the record. Fell just a little bit short. But of course, when you're 62 years old running 250s in
getting
the marathon,
faster and faster.
What can you expect, really? On a windy day, she still performed 2:54.31, which is only 2 minutes shy of her own current world record. And I should mention that was set just about 8 weeks ago. So she's doing something special at 62 years old, running world record performances in only several weeks apart.
I know. I'd love to get her on the podcast. That was her 110th marathon.
110th marathon.
Yeah.
So
exciting.
What are you doing for training? And tell us so that we can share that with everyone else. All right. Good things going on there in Japan, and we are going to keep you posted on what they notice as a result of the experience.
One final thing, super quick, that Ajay Wilson, her alma mater, the high school in New Jersey, Neptune High School, named their new track after her. So she's our former guest here in the AtoZrunning podcast. So I thought I'd make a mention of that because that's a really cool honor.
What an honor. Yeah. She's got the track. So the Neptune High School track is now the Ajay Wilson something. And that is really really cool.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. Now, Andy said one more thing, but we have one more thing. Because just a quick note, while you're listening to this, the NCAA Cross Country Championships also just happened. This would have been on March 15th, on Monday the 15th. And the reason why we're not going to give you much on that now is because it's too close to publishing date. However, we will share any notable things and highlights next week. If you want to check out the results for yourself, though, we'll put the link in this week's episode as well. Find it on AtoZrunning.com.
Without further ado, let's get to our main topic and our interview with Kim Conley. Growth mindset has been a buzz phrase in businesses and organizations in the last few years.
And schools.
Zach's in education, so he can attest to that.
And life coaching. Yeah, and everything, in fact. You've heard someone mention growth mindset if you have some semblance of awareness of what people are saying around you.
I didn't really know much about it, so I kind of did a little bit of background, and Zach informed me coming from a world of education. But we want to ask the question, what is a growth mindset in running? According to Harvard Business Review, growth mindset can be described like this. Individuals who believe their talents can be developed through hard work, good strategies, and input from others have a growth mindset. They tend to achieve more than those with a more fixed mindset, those who believe their talents are innate gifts. This is because they worry less about looking smart and they put more energy into learning, or in a runner's case, worry less about beating people and put more energy into improvement.
As one example. We've
brought on two-time Olympian Kim Conley to discuss her incredible growth mindset and how implementing this framework has been important in her progression as an athlete.
Yes, and it's really important to remember, and I want you to kind of think about this when you're listening to Kim talk, that the concept of mindsets in general, and especially all of the research that's been done, look up some of Carol Dweck's work if you really want to see research behind mindsets. But what you're finding is that these things are contextual, so that a person who says, oh, I have a growth mindset, as just a blanket statement, the question is, in what situations? Because you can, in fact, be someone who is relatively fixed mindset. Like me, for example, I have quite a few fixed mindsets about things that I think will never change. I'm also somewhat pessimistic. And so as a consequence, think things, if they change, will change negatively. But in certain areas, suddenly my mindset is much different. And then it's, the more of kind of growth and focus. And so that tends to be true for all of us. The question is how I notice what my mindset is doing in given situations. And then, of course, what we should be thinking about to try to influence that.
And Kim unpacks this for her. It's very amazing to hear from her the inside scoop about her journey. Let's talk about Kim Conley. So a little background on her. Kim has been called an underdog, yet she's a two-time Olympian, and she represented Team USA in 2012 and 2016 on the track. She's an excellent racer and is known for her consistent improvement. In fact, Kim PR'd for 16 years straight, which proves her consistency.
Okay.
And suggests a growth mindset. That's why we reached out to her to talk about this. In 2014, Kim won the 10K for the USA title in a battle with Jordan Hasay that she's going to talk about in this episode. So listen for that. And in 2015, Kim won the USA Half Marathon Championships, and she holds a really impressive half marathon PR of 109.44. And she has a list of impressive PRs, but you can go to AtoZrunning.com for that. We want to get to this interview with Kim Conley. Let's talk. Hi, Kim. Welcome to the AtoZrunning podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, first off, thank you in your track season for spending this time to come on the show. You just had your season opener. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. I'm down in Orange County right now and got to race a 10,000 last night. So, sorry about Smokey making his cameo. Yeah, we're down in Orange County, still in the hotel, going back to Flagstaff tomorrow.
Fantastic. And then next week you'll be racing again too. So you're really like in it. This is race season now. I'm so excited to dive into your progression. You're the perfect person to talk about growth mindset in running because you've had such an amazing career and you have kept progressing, which is unusual, I think, for a lot of runners. And so I just want to dive in, starting with high school. I had heard in an interview that even as a high schooler, you kind of had a growth mindset. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, the term growth mindset wasn't one I was familiar with really until a few years ago. But then just for fun, I kind of I had like a little Instagram thing going for a while where I was going back through my old high school journals and just like, pulling out things that made me laugh or whatever to share with people. And I found my freshman year of high school, I'd set a goal of 5:10 for the 1600, which was very arbitrary. I did not know what I was doing. I'd run 5:10 for 1500 meters the year before. So I just thought, oh, what if I could go 100 meters further in the same amount of time? And so then when the season started, and I can't remember where I started in the 1600 now, but it was so far from 5:10. But then like over the course of that spring, watching these journal entries, like detail my progress and then like me like break down like, well, if I just make this much improvement, and I like just like broke it down into all these little steps for myself, and nobody was coaching me on how to do that. And I was like, I sent it to my sports psychologist that I work with now, and I was like, look at this growth mindset I just naturally had. But it does help. I mean, I have to do it with myself all the time now. Like last night I ran 31:40 for 10,000 and I missed my PR by 5 seconds, and I missed the Olympic standard by 15 seconds. And when you break down that math over 25 laps, it's like very frustratingly close to those goals. But I just like, the only way to cope is to like kind of break it down in terms of like, well, that now I have to improve by less than a second a lap to hit those goals. And then you make progress from there. And so, I wasn't a great runner starting out. I certainly like wasn't one of the best in my local area. And so having that growth mindset, I think just became natural for me because I wasn't winning races. So just seeking that continual self-improvement was the way I found satisfaction.
That's profound. I actually, like, as I hear you say that, like, I wasn't the top, so I had this other goal at that time, and that developed throughout your running career. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, dive in just a little bit more to how that perspective of the sport and those goals has influenced your running career.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like going back to high school, I just happened to be like my high school and my city just happened to be in a moment where there were these fantastic runners coming out. Like it was like different schools in the area had state champions all the time in California, which is like really good. And when I was a freshman, Sarah Bay back then, she was a senior on my team. And she won all 4 state titles in cross throughout high school and, multiple state titles on the track. And so I was just kind of surrounded by people that were at a different level than I was. And so I just developed this other mindset of like, one, how do you contribute to a team? Like in cross country, I kind of like found satisfaction in like having a role within the team that, wasn't about being the number one runner. And then also like on the track, being able to PR and make it to the section meet. And then, eventually get to the state meet. I just had all these other like rungs on the ladder I was achieving. And so I adopted that mindset early and I carried it throughout my career. And I did end up going on a 16-year PR streak. It wasn't until I was injured in 2015 that I finally broke it or like it stopped, which was a bummer, but it was definitely a good run of years.
Yes, that is absolutely incredible. Like, how do you think that you were able to do that?
Well, I think one, I was fortunate in that I stayed healthy for so long. I didn't have setbacks that like, took me out of an entire season. And then, I guess there's an element of like when you're starting out, if you're not really, really fast and there's more room for improvement. But yeah, I mean, I think it was just the ability to just see, like be happy and satisfied and eager to even take like a second PR. I've just never been someone that has PR'd by a huge chunk of time. It's always been kind of like these, you know, in the 5,000, say like, you know, 5 or 6 second PR is pretty normal for me.
Mm-hmm.
Which lends itself to that momentum, because you can just keep chipping. So I'm curious, Kim, because whenever anyone talks about mindset, one of the things that, you know, makes a person productive in their mindset is that they don't look at something and say, I can't. They might say something like, I can't right now, or I can't yet, but they never say definitively, I can't. However, we know that even in your superhumanness of these 16 years and on with this running career, we know that we're prone to doubt and self-doubt at times. I'm curious if there have been significant moments during that progression where you doubted and potentially started limiting yourself in your thinking.
Yeah, I mean, there's always doubt. And I'm always wrestling with what I think I'm capable of achieving and then what I'm actually achieving. That has been there from the beginning, and it still exists today. I went into the meet last night absolutely believing that I was ready to run right around 31 minutes, and everything in my training pointed to that. And then last night I got back to the hotel, like feeling a little bummed. And I was like, then I had to laugh at myself. I was like, I've never PR'd by 35 seconds in anything in my life. Why, after all these years, did I convince myself that this was going to be the night? But you know, I don't know. I also don't want to lose that mindset and that belief that one day it might happen and I might just completely knock it out of the park. And then the other thing is, sometimes that you have moments where you knock it out of the park, even with the 5 second PR. So like my Olympic trials race in 2012, that was only a 5 second PR. And that was part of the beauty of that race. Is on paper, I don't think anybody counted me as someone that could make that Olympic team, but I knew in my heart, like, hey, I only have to run 5 seconds faster than I ever have before to get this Olympic standard. I was like, and that's what I do. Like, the 5 second PR is like in my wheelhouse. And I knew that it was possible that I could contend for a top 3 finish. And so, you know, that's an example of like the like really hard outcome goal of making the Olympic team. Like, did I have doubt around that? Absolutely. But I knew in my heart that it was possible. And so I was willing to try.
Well, that's part of like the classic growth mindset, is embracing challenges and then pursuing to overcome them. And you just gave an example of that, and you had no doubt. You like went in, tackled the challenge. Are there some other examples of times that you've had to do that?
Yeah, I mean, in 2 years later, in 2014, I was racing the 10,000, and I really, really wanted to win my first national title. So again, that, you know, was like a big kind of like breakthrough moment that I was seeking. And then the way the race unfolded, I ended up doing a lot of leading, which isn't ideal. And then Jordan Hesse just pounced with 200 meters to go. And I think, you know, most people would bet at that point, like, the race is over. When someone sits on the other runner for the entire race and then kicks with 200 meters to go, like, there's no coming back from that normally. But what I've learned to do, I think, because of that whole growth mindset, is also just like really focus in on like what you can control in a moment. And so on the top of the turn, all I was thinking was no gap, no gap, no gap. And so I just like zoned in on her. Like, she had made this move, she got in front of me, but I was able to not let it grow. And then once I came off the turn into the last 100 meters, then that's when I was like, she swung wide and lane 1 opened up. And I was suddenly like, I have an opportunity. I'm going to get by her again.
Nice.
That's such an exciting race. I was reading about it, and I'm like, oh my goodness. That's like a dream moment. And I listened to another interview that you did talking about like visualization and how important that is for you too. And, you know, with both embracing challenges and then believing in this result, how has visualization played a part?
Yeah, I mean, I visualize all my races beforehand, usually like a week to 10 days out. It helps when you get to the start line or you know, or in the hours before or whatever, and you feel like you have this like big daunting task ahead of you. I feel like when I've visualized all the stages of the race, then I can like break it down again and just be like, okay, like, no, I've already done this in my mind. I've run this entire race. And what was step one again? And then you're just sort of like in that moment, you're like, all right, like just get off the starting line, or just, like attach yourself to the pack, whatever, like that kind of goal and step you've created for the beginning of the race, then you can just like zone in on that moment.
That's huge. I wonder too, you gave the 2014 example. When many of us visualize races, we visualize ourselves being the one with 200 meters to go around everyone and break away, right? That's kind of like the dream moment in a race. And so when it happens to you, you can see it, and you watch these races with people and you can see it on their faces when someone just decides that they've lost in that moment. And most people do in that moment.
But
however, you didn't. But that's, that's a key factor. And I can't remember exactly who we were talking to recently about this, who said how important it is to consider ahead of time the worst moments in the race, especially. And, what we're visualizing, especially make sure we're paying attention to those moments that we know, if they happen, and if they happen in that way, are going to be bad. And we need to be prepared for that. And so, and I'm thinking then, of course, there's a lot going on in our own heads, but then there's also those external influences too. So, you can't necessarily control what other people are going to do in the race, and you end up having to lead quite a bit of it in, situations like that. But also even, potentially how other people plant doubts in our mind. And so like in that moment, if you can just reflect a little bit longer on that with us, when Jordan Hasay goes around you, does that tell you, like, because she did it and because she did it in that moment, does it tell you she's going to beat me, or does it just tell you it's one more challenge to overcome? Like what does that kind of happen in your head?
Yeah. I think in the moment there was a little bit of both. I think about a lap before, she had started like clipping me from behind, and I just got this feeling that she was just like ready to go and like wasn't allowed to, or something. Like, Alberto had told her like, you have to wait till 200 meters to go. And so I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like I'm working so hard up here, and she's just like can't even control herself. But also that race, the way she ran that race, it did feel very orchestrated. Like, like I think I may have even heard Alberto like telling her when it was time to go. And there's something about that to me that's like not like natural or organic enough. Like I wanted that race for myself. Like it's just different. Like the level of like heart and desire I was going to put into it. It was a home meet for me. It was in Sacramento, and that's where, I went to UC Davis, which is like 20 minutes down the road, and stayed in the Sacramento area for my career. And my sister was getting married, and so family from all over the world had flown in. They flew in time for my race beforehand, and so the stands were just like packed with my people. And so they just, I don't know, I just felt like she was running this very kind of like tactical race that was just like, it was like Alberto was giving her the signal, and then she was going to make her move. And I was just like, for so many emotional reasons, I was just like, no, this is my moment. And so I think that was where I was able to kind of like overcome that feeling of like, oh, this is over, and just like leave my heart out on the track.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Oh, that must have been a great moment coming across the line.
Yeah.
That's great. So speaking of competitors, now in that race, it sounds like to me that Jordan wasn't a blockade. Like she as a person or other competitors that you race against are not blocking you from your goals. How do you view your competitors?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. On some level, they are helping me get the most out of myself. And so, it's like, absolutely, am I competitive? Do I want to win the races? Yeah. But I also appreciate having them around, and I really prefer and kind of thrive off those really heated battles. And so I really like being in races where I'm like, oh, like anybody could take this. So for me, it's like, oh, I want to be surrounded by people that are all kind of evenly matched, and it's just going to be a dogfight to the finish.
Yeah, those are exciting ones for us to watch.
Yeah.
You do too.
They are.
That's awesome. So we talked about some launching points in your growth, different moments that you have increased your growth throughout the years. Can you think of any more that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, 2016 at the Olympic trials was a really different kind of like challenge and obstacle because I had my heart set on making the team in the 10,000. And it was like the goal that formed in the immediate aftermath of like the Olympic trials and the Olympics in 2012. I was just like, I'm coming back in the 10,000. Admittedly, a little bit because I didn't make the final in the 5,000, and the 10,000 is a straight final at the Olympics. So I was like, oh, if you get to the Olympics in the 10,000, you don't have to worry about the rounds. But I definitely I spent 4 years, getting ready to run the 10,000 at the Olympics in my mind. And that's why I ran in 2014 and, went for that US title in the 10,000. And I moved up to the half marathon. And I won the US half marathon championships. So I felt ready for that. And then at the Olympic trials, I was clipped from behind and my shoe came off 3 miles in. And, since you guys compete on the track also, you know how tight you tie your spikes because you're so nervous about the shoelaces coming undone. So I couldn't just slip it back on. I had to sit down on the track and really yank it back on. And so by the time I got up, the field was just really far away. And I stayed in for 5 miles trying to catch back up. And then eventually I had to do some critical assessment and realize those top 3 spots are gone. And I dropped out to come back in the 5,000. And that was really challenging. It was really hard for me to not feel like I'd failed and to I had to just keep reminding myself oh, you're still fit. All the fitness is there. And you didn't even have a bad race. You just had this unfortunate incident. But still, it was just the Olympic trials, it's just being top 3 and, making the team that is the outcome goal. That's kind of all that matters there. And so it was just a little scary. But to be able to regroup and then come back, and I got the 3rd in the 5,000 to make my 2nd Olympic team. So that was a very different type of challenge. But it was, I think a lot of growth came from that.
Thanks for sharing that with us. We were watching the Olympic trials, and I remember this. We weren't there. We were watching on television.
On TV.
On TV. But I do wonder, a little bit more about that time when you're deciding to do the 5,000, resetting your brain, getting ready to go. What was that like?
I remember being in the hotel in the aftermath of the 10,000 and just being just feeling like everything was swirling around me. I'm in the eye of a storm right now. This is, just oh my gosh, what has happened? I visualized everything and it was just completely off the rails. It was just not how I had pictured. I had a whole plan for going to altitude, my whole build up to the Olympics that involved leaving the Olympic trials right away. I wasn't even going to stay and watch the 5,000s. And so all of a sudden I was just completely readjusting plans. But then I finally just relaxed and I was I had to do a lot of spinning in my mind. I was you know what? The Olympic trials are fun and you are going to see even more of your friends now because you get to stay here longer. I just started telling myself all these positive things, kind of the silver linings from the situation. And I relaxed a lot and I just started enjoying the experience. And I was now you're going to go out because the 5,000 has 2 rounds. So I was you get to go out onto the track 2 more times. I was just I just tried to soak it in and enjoy it. And that worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
That is an amazing perspective because even in my low stakes disappointments, I have a hard time reeling myself back in. So to hear from you that you're able to look for the silver linings and to find the fun in it, even at high stakes, I mean, that in and of itself is a massive skill to have, is just really inspiring for me. And I'm sure everyone listening to hear. Now let's talk a little bit about how you have a growth mindset in the obstacle of injury and how you've been able to work with that.
Mm-hmm. It's not easy. But yeah, the biggest challenge in it is like I've said, like we've been talking about this entire time, like I developed a growth mindset early on. I know how to do that. I know how to break things into steps and just climb up the ladder one rung at a time. But the hardest part is assessing and being really honest with yourself about where you currently are. You have to know like where the bottom of the ladder is, so you know the appropriate like next rung to shoot for. And I have a really hard time with that when I've gotten out of shape, basically. I mean, I don't seem to have the knack for cross training my way into very good fitness. So it's that the biggest challenge has definitely been like accepting kind of my current state and then finding the path forward.
So if you can, this is I guess my last question on this moment, but knowing that a number of people listening to this conversation right now are in that state of I'm probably injured or I know I'm injured and trying to assess now what are the next steps and how can I climb out of this. So what do you tell those people when we all know that challenge? So how do we get to the next step?
Yeah. You have to trust that, you have to kind of like shelve the like big outcome goals. So, whether that is like going to the New York Marathon or being at the Olympic trials or whatever it is for an individual, you have to kind of put that on the shelf for the moment and just say like, what's the next most realistic thing I can do? And, so that might mean like, I'm going to be able to run 7 days a week again. And then eventually it becomes like, well, I'm going to race, say like a 5K, and I'm going to accept whatever the result is. And then I'm going to start building my workouts and my training around what that result is. And that's hard because, we all want to be like the best version of ourselves. And, my PR in the 5,000 is 15:05. And I always want to be in that shape. But last December, I raced kind of early in my buildup and I ran 15:36. And I just had to swallow it and say, okay, that's where I am right now. And we started doing workouts based on what, putting 15:36 into pace calculators. And my training just really started going well after that. And then last night I went through 5K in 15:37. So it's like, so I know that the growth is there and that the process is working. But again, I also want more too.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're excited to see what's next, what's more for you. And we'll be keeping our audience updated on everything that you're doing in the sport of running. And we just really appreciate your time. We could have talked to you about a variety of subjects. In fact, I brought up a couple subjects that we could talk to you about because you're just a wealth of experience and information. And we really appreciate how you have shown this growth mindset and shared it in interviews as well. So we really appreciate you, Kim. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me.
Well, excellent insights from Kim. And more importantly, just being able to experience an examination of what it means to have these small incremental gains for such a long period of time. Mm-hmm. We talk so much about things like the jump or, the moment of something. And for her in her career, there weren't necessarily very many like significant now I've arrived kinds of things. And for some, that can be difficult because you kind of basically feel like I'm just never making that leap. But she didn't have to ever make that leap because 16 years later, she's amongst the world's best. And so in that sense, that's where that mindset piece really was just an attractive conversation there, because we're really trying to think about there are a lot of different situations we encounter as runners, and what our mindset is in those individual situations can change dramatically one to another. And you see in Kim's example and in her story where by keeping the same kind of mindset, whether it was a victory, whether it was a significant victory, or just a small victory, whether it was a defeat, or whether it was altogether an unpredictable experience, that her mindset was largely the same in all of those things. And I think that is profound and not very easy.
Yeah. I mean, I was struck with that too. Just the fact that no matter the situation she was in, she was always looking to make incremental gains. She's always looking to improve. So regardless of her place in the things that she could not control, she was still looking at progress as being the key to her success. I want to bring back that Business Insider article. That's okay, Zach. And the author discusses how we get stuck in a fixed mindset. And it kind of stuck out to me. So I'm going to read it. When we face challenges, receive criticism, or fare poorly compared with others, we can easily fall into insecurity or defensiveness, a response that inhibits growth. We talk about this a lot in running, I think, the whole comparison factor. And we also face a lot of challenges, including injury, especially long distance runners. I think many of us, because we put our bodies through so much, have faced some serious challenges that also come with emotional and mental challenges. So how we step out of the fixed mindset and into growth in these triggers, they're calling them triggers, is going to be instrumental in helping us have a growth mindset through these difficult times. So I wanted to put that out there as well, Zach. Any more thoughts?
Yeah, so and always remembering that it's just as likely a trap to experience a kind of fixed mindset in challenges as it is in successes.
Oh.
And so always remembering that, I look at a success and think, I've done it. Whatever I was doing, that was it, and now I've arrived. Of course, that's never the right answer to any kind of situation, because in running especially, there's no arrival. Arguably, you can achieve a major milestone goal and think this is as far as I have hoped to come. And in that sense, maybe I think I've arrived. But as runners, our goal is rarely ever to finish a race and then be done forever. So in that sense, how do I see in my mindset, how do I see my experiences amidst those struggles and challenges as well as those successes?
Yeah. And what is a success? And I think that is also part of the conversation. I was on Clubhouse in a conversation in the running club. So join me. If you're on Clubhouse, you can join running.
Just listen to the podcast.
But I wanted to mention our conversation was about creating goals and objectives that will last a long time. Well, if we have a growth mindset, sure, there might be a point where we hit a PR, but what other goals can we pursue in our growth mindset? Okay, I hit this time, but is that the only thing I'm looking at? Just a time? No. We're looking to thrive in all areas of our life. So what does it look like for us to achieve and have a growth mindset towards things besides a time goal?
That's it. So much to unpack when we talk about what's going on in our minds as runners amongst the many other roles that we have in life. But for now, that's about all we want to do at the moment. You can bet yourself that we'll be talking more about our minds and the psychology behind running in many capacities coming up soon. But you definitely, at the very least, don't want to miss any of that new content. So head to AtoZrunning.com, look for the word follow, subscribe in all the places, follow on all the social media platforms. Andy's in all of them, in all of the ways, talking about running. And that's great.
And make sure that you follow Kim as well in her road to the Olympic trials this year. We'll be keeping you updated, and she is a vibrant example of growth mindset.